Oh, hello. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Hockey Writers Live. And it's going to be a little bit different now. Still going to be your host, Mark Scheig, but now we are going to be doing different kinds of shows here, just in the sense of not going to be live like we've been doing. We're going to drop a new episode every Thursday now, same kind of format. We're going to have a wonderful guest, and then we're going to have a panel. So, really appreciate you bearing with us here. It's just, I think moving forward, it's going to help us flexibility wise to continue to bring you good guests and other things like that, including this guest here joining us now from NHL.com. He covers the New Jersey Devils, and he also is one of the best when it comes to the NHL Draft. Mike Morreale is joining us. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the program.
What's going on, Mark? So
Oh,
glad to join you today. It's nice to just talk hockey with anyone, right?
absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's on Zoom. It doesn't matter if it's on the phone. As long as it's hockey, it brings some normalcy to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. So just how are you doing? How have you handled everything so far?
Well, I guess I'm no different than anyone else, right, Mark?
Mhm.
We're taking it day by day. Obviously, the fact that these vaccines are coming out, that's a positive sign. Uh, as you said in the open there, I cover the Devils daily. And the fact that on March 2nd, they made the announcement, or at least our governor here in Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy, announced that 10% capacity in all spectator sports in arenas. So,
Mm.
March 2nd, the Devils host the New York Islanders. So that'll be the first time fans will be able to enter the arena since last February. So
All right.
we're looking forward to that. I know that the Devils fans are really excited about that. The Devils, we spoke to them a lot about it the past few days, and they're excited to at least have 10% fans in the building. So things are looking ahead and looking forward, and we're all hoping for the best here as we move forward.
Yeah, we're finally starting to catch a little bit of a light at the end of this tunnel. We're finally little by little, like, maybe by April be a little bit more, maybe by May, and hopefully we'll eventually build back up to something positive here. And that's a good sign to see fans come in. And from a Devil standpoint, Mike, it's the whole situation with COVID striking down the team. You want to talk about one of the teams that has been hit hardest by this pandemic? It's the New Jersey Devils. To just kind of fill everybody in on how bad did it get? And I know you've talked to the players. How bad did it get for them? And honestly, obviously they're happy to be back, but just everything that they've been through, that's got to be an incredible story.
Yeah, it was, Mark. They returned to game action on February 16th after
Mm-hmm.
15 days off because of the COVID-19 protocol. It was a long ordeal, and the Devils had as many as 19 players on the protocol list. They
Wow.
entered their last game with 6 players on the list, and 4 players were added the following day.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Zajac had to wait, on reaching the 1,000 game milestone. He was placed on the COVID list, something he finally reached on February 21st against Washington. But I, it's almost, yes, all the players are back now, but I, Lindy Ruff was talking about it actually today after
Mm-hmm.
their practice. There are still some players that he sees coughing on the bench sometimes. I think that's when you've maxed yourself out. You may cough, even if you didn't have COVID. But I think there are still players that are still feeling the lingering effects of this. They're not
Yeah.
not quite up to par yet. But the Devils did come out like gangbusters, right, Mark? They they
Mm-hmm.
they won their opening 2 games coming out of COVID. They've lost 3 straight here, so they got to right the ship a little bit. But now that it's over with, and the players seem to be, getting into a groove of what they need to do, with Nico coming in and Trav back, Mackenzie Blackwood back in net. So now it's just a matter of getting all the pieces in order again, and getting back to the way they were playing early on in the season.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, the hot start. And I think those, this year especially, fans of a particular team are going to be interested in their team first and foremost, and then probably in the teams that are in their division because that's all they're playing this year. So it kind of feels a little bit separate. So normally we would, as a Blue Jackets writer, I would normally follow the Devils pretty closely. That hasn't been the case this year, but they got off to a tremendous start, Mike. Why do you think that is? Or what stood out about this team that allowed them to get to such a hot start?
Yeah, 3 things, Mark. They were starting on time last year. Late starts, meaning, first 10 minutes of the game they would get behind 1-2-0, and then they're battling, clawing their way back. This year it was different. They were playing teams competitively from the opening draw. ending plays in the defensive zone, something Lindy Ruff really stressed in training camp, and the goaltending. Let's not forget, Corey Crawford had agreed to a 2-year, $7.8 million contract back in October after playing, 13 seasons with the Blackhawks. He was supposed to be a key veteran piece in this rebuild, but he decided to retire on a January 10th. And the Devils had to, kind of shift gears here. That left Blackwood as the guy. On January 18th, the Devils claimed Aaron Dell off waivers from the Maple Leafs. GM Tom Fitzgerald probably felt that compared to Scott Wedgwood and Eric Comrie, Dell might be more qualified for the role of being that solid backup, for Blackwood. Look, Ruff wants to use the skills of his players to own the puck, building a team that can dominate by way of speed and possession. We all know he's a proponent of defending, and that's something he wants each player to have a passion for in order to generate that success. And I think Ruff did say, in previous weeks that the team is starting to, become more reactive instead of thinking out there on what he wants, the approach he wants to take as far as eliminating plays in their own zone and then, creating a transition that's effective and can keep the puck in the other end, because that's how Ruff wants to play.
That's a perfect segue into kind of the next question let's get to about Lindy Ruff. Obviously a very long career, head coach in Buffalo, been an assistant in other places leading back to this opportunity. And I know he kind of had the rep of being someone that maybe didn't like playing young players as much, but it seems like he's evolved into that role. Just what has he been able to bring to the Devils, at least in the early going, from your site?
Yeah, it just seems as though he want, and you saw this with the Rangers too, right, Mark? I mean, as an assistant coach there with David Quinn, he was working with these young players. You see what he was able to do, with Adam Fox and how he was able to come into his own. I think as far as the young players go, the Devils wanted to give these young players a chance. Tom Fitzgerald said that was one of the key factors in this rebuild, was if these young players had the ability, they showed they were capable of doing what he expected them to do in training camp, then they were going to be given every shot to make this roster. And you're seeing that there are a lot of young players in this lineup. And I think Lindy Ruff has grasped that and knows that in order for this team to be successful, these kids need to play and they need to play well. And the Devils do have their fair share of veterans here with the Kyle Palmieris, the Travis Sajaks, and the like. And obviously, these young players will be looking to them for a little leadership role and experience as well. PK Subban, for instance, I think he's having a real nice season after, maybe he pressed a little bit too much last year, Mark. And I think this year, I like to say with regard to PK, is less has been more for him. He tried to do a little too much last year. This year, he's playing into his comfort zone and what he's capable of doing. And let's face it, Tom Fitzgerald brought in some good players like the Andreas Janssens, who's fit in well in a top six role, Ryan Murray, who's now paired with PK Subban. And you look at a guy like Ty Smith, the rookie, what an outstanding year. And I know we're going to touch on Ty, but really outstanding year. And it's things like that where you have the veterans working and the rookies really paying attention to what they're doing. And Ruff is trying to make it all come together, and he is. He's done just that for, at this, I guess you can call it the midway point of the season almost.
Yeah, absolutely. God. Yeah, we're a third of the season already gone. What happened here?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. And let's talk about Ty Smith since you brought him up here. I mean, yeah, it seems like that this big stage, at least so far, isn't phasing him. He's demonstrating that he has the ability to eventually possibly become that number one defenseman that the Devils are eventually looking for. How has he been able to adjust so well so early, Mike?
Yeah, the thing I always admired about Ty Smith, Mark, was his ability as a skater. It's so great to watch. Real good vision, makes good plays and reads, and is diligent when it comes to his responsibilities as a defenseman down low. I remember he won the WHL Defenseman of the Year 2 straight seasons, so he can quarterback a power play with relative ease. The Devils showed a lot of patience with Ty Smith, and right now that patience is paying dividends. I remember his first year in training camp when John Hines was the coach. there was talk that he could make the roster right after, a couple months after he was drafted, but they sent him back to Spokane. He was able to do what he did best there, and played a season last season. And look, it's paying off for them. And Ty Smith has been basically paired with Damon Severson. They've combined to form a real nice tandem. They're really playing well, and that's a sign of growth by Ty in the minimal amount of games he's played. And Damon has just carried on where he finished last year. And those guys offensively have been able to help the Devils out, and defensively they've been able to shut down opponents. And that's what you need in the top pair for sure.
Absolutely. Well said on all that. Speaking of, up front, Nico Hischier was just named the captain of the New Jersey Devils, and he missed a lot of the season to begin with. He just got back into the lineup himself. Just, Mike, what makes him the right choice right now to be the captain of the New Jersey Devils in your mind?
You know what, Mark? I truly and honestly, I was saying this last year. I think when Adam, Andy Green was traded to the Islanders, you kind of felt that this was setting the table for Nico Hischier. I think it was predicted. We all kind of saw this. Hischier plays the game the Devils' way. He's a committed two-way guy who does a lot more than score goals and make plays. He's a straight shooter in the locker room. Sometimes he'll revert to coaches speak, but for the most part, he's honest, and he gets ticked off too. I mean, he could change the outcome of games. And to me, Mark, he's a future Selke Trophy finalist. I see Nico Hischier, that type of player. And let's face it, being a captain, a lot of responsibility. But the main thing for Nico, and what Tom Fitzgerald kept reiterating, was for him to be himself. He'll have a great support cast with other players and what it means to be captain. And, he'll lean on, those veteran guys. So it was nice because, the Devils had a video for Hischier prepared that included many of the former Devils captains congratulating him and giving him some advice and well wishes. Hischier said Andy Green and Bryce Salvador, to name a few, were on the video, and which I thought was a classy move, Mark. Yep. Fitzgerald said he contacted veterans Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac the night before to alert them to the fact that Hischier would be announced as captain the next day. He said he did that out of respect to where both players, are in their careers. So I thought that was a classy move. And something else that I didn't realize until, I was listening to the NBC broadcast, Pierre Maguire brought up that Hischier's parents sent former Devils GM Ray Shero a message thanking him for selecting Nico #1 overall, ultimately leading to his becoming one of 29 NHL captains in the NHL right now. It's, the Rangers and the Senators are the only clubs without a captain right now. So that was pretty classy in itself too. So I think, Hischier says the right things. He does the right things. He plays the right way. That the players respect him. Kyle Palmieri, Zajac, they respect him in the locker room and what he does. He's the right choice here, Mark, for captain of the Devils.
And that's wonderful to hear about the classiness, the way that the Devils are handling it. You just love to hear stories like that about those that rise up to that spot and who deserve the attention as well, because when they do it the right way, those are the players that you want representing the league, representing your team. And it sounds like that he's really doing that in spades. So that's awesome to hear for if you're a Devils fan, especially. So a couple more for you on the Devils, Mike. Obviously can't go talking about them too long without talking about Jack Hughes. And it's year 2 of the Jack Hughes experience. At least from my outsider's point of view, it seems like that he's finally getting comfortable, and it seems like he's really starting to get some chances offensively. What are you seeing there? How much has he improved or strided in this year number 2 for him?
Yeah. Had 7 goals, 21 points in 61 games as a rookie, has 4 goals, 11 points in 14 games as a sophomore. So no doubt Hughes is exhibiting more confidence, driving the net more. He's shooting more. He's been effective on faceoffs. He's getting there. He's working on it. He's playing the game that I remember so well when he broke records with the United States National Team Development Program. Skating so well, finding the open areas. That the one thing at the NTDP that I always admired in Hughes, Mark, was, and I didn't really see it last year for obvious reasons as an 18-year-old, was his fearlessness in getting the puck. We're seeing it all come together right now, and it's been fun to watch. I remember something, NHL Central Scouting senior manager David Gregby told me in his draft year. He said Hughes possessed Connor McDavid's ability to pounce on loose pucks and create offense, as well as Jack Eichel's tremendous stride and open ice. And you're starting to see that when you watch Jack skate in the neutral zone, either on transition or getting back to back check, you see the stride. You see his aggressiveness to jump on pucks, to go, he's fearless in getting, into the slot, into the crease to maybe pick up loose pucks. And he's not afraid to go along the wall either. Yeah, he'll get pushed off the puck every so often, but I'm seeing a lot more strength out of Jack Hughes. He said in training camp that he gained about 10 to 12 pounds, and he called it all muscle. So we have to take him to his word on that. And if it is muscle, and you can see he's a changed player out there and what he's doing. Certainly the Devils are real happy to see that. He's going to obviously be, C1 or C2 for the Devils for the long future with Nico Hischier there as well.
God, sidebar before we finish the Devils. I cannot wait to see Tri-State New York hockey as we move forward here. Lafreniere, Hughes, the Islanders are still really good. Matt Barzal is there. If I'm in New York and I'm a hockey fan, I cannot wait to see a decade's worth of those three teams playing each other with the skill that they have all of a sudden. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there, Mark. Even like the Islanders, you're seeing it with Barzal, right? He is each of these teams now has so many fun players to watch. I love watching Matt Barzal skate. You look at the Rangers and Adam Fox defensively, what he's been able to do for that team. Lafreniere and the potential there. I know he's got 2 goals. It's early in his NHL career. It's going to come together, Rangers fans, believe me. And with the Devils, you see all these young, good players they have in the lineup. It won't be long. We're starting to see it this year. Maybe since they're playing each other so many times, we're going to see more of these little battles between players and obviously between the teams because they're playing more time. So it's a lot of fun to watch, and certainly metropolitan hockey is in a good state for the long-standing future, 5-10 years at least.
No doubt about it. And Mike will finish the Devils with this thought. Just, can they sustain this somehow? I mean, it's a tough division that they're in. You mentioned several times about the young players, but there's a nice veteran mix as well. Blackwood's got to be the guy in net. Can they find a way to somehow stay in this race at all?
Well, the Devils got themselves in a real good place now, Mark. They played some really good hockey. They have had some good wins. They've built a foundation around trying to play really strong 5-on-5 hockey. We know that that's critical to give themselves a chance to win. They're going to have to get better offensively, though. They're going to have to score 3 or 4 goals. But at the same time, they have to make sure that they're doing the job inside of their own zone, not giving up the opportunities that basically would allow their team grade A scoring chances. They're getting the goaltending. I think it will hold up. The Devils have the schedule is just outrageous upcoming here for the Devils. I think, for the next 2-3 months, they have, 4 games per week. So you got to figure like Mackenzie Blackwood, and he said today that he can go maybe 3 games a week, but who's going to be that guy that backs up Wedgwood, backs Mackenzie Blackwood up? Is it going to be Wedgwood? Is it going to be Aaron Dell, Eric Comrie? I mean, we're going to have to see how that plays out, but goaltending is going to play huge here if the Devils are going to have, any shot at a playoff berth. And they're also going to have to score more than 2 goals a game. So while the offense and these young players have to pick it up a little bit, we know the goaltending is there. Mackenzie Blackwood can get it done. Defensively, I think they're in a good place. Offensively, we need to score a little more goals here.
Well said, Mike. And in case you're just joining in, Hockey Writers Live, we're with Mike Morreale of NHL.com. Just had a great talk about the Devils, and to make sure that you hit that like button on Facebook and make sure that you hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You will not miss any of these interviews doing that. So, of course, the other thing, Mike, that you do is the NHL Draft. And boy, what a time for that with everything that's going on in this world. Just the way that you guys scout and the way that you guys prepare, what are you noticing are some of the biggest adjustments and differences that you have had to go through in making sure that you're ready for, whenever the 2021 draft happens?
Yeah, well, all the NHL clubs and central scouting are in the same scouting circumstances. Not having the summer and preseason events meant a lost opportunity to provide an early identification of the NHL draft prospects. The scenario is even more muddled with not knowing the start and length of the upcoming season for various junior leagues. And that will also impact the traditional dates and format for various tournaments and events. Central Scouting is set up with an online system now in which it can proceed to distribute and collect player information, questionnaires of 21 draft prospects, and they activated that process earlier. And the plan for Central Scouting right now is just to keep producing players to watch lists, because it's very difficult to put a numerical list in order when you're not seeing these players. Game reports, video viewing, working the phone lines, each has been vital this time, as is watching games in person, of course. Most of that is done in the queue, or if someone's able to go overseas into Sweden and see these games live. Traditionally the lifeblood of scouting is watching the games in person, right? But the way things have gone, it's been seriously curtailed due to concerns surrounding the coronavirus. But a lot of networking and video mark, and in the areas where they are playing, they have been able to scout. So there were game reports from last year. So there's a little bit of history on the player. But of course, you want more in-depth analysis of these guys. So hopefully some of these leads can get going rather soon.
So, Mike, with all that said, do you feel that the draft should be moved back? I know that there's a couple general managers. Steve Yzerman comes to mind. I know at the heart of the matter, Jarmo Kekalainen and the scout that's inside him would favor moving back. Do you feel like we're heading in that direction?
Yeah, well, I know that there's been talk about moving the draft to actually next year, and then there's been talk about moving the draft to maybe December or something along those lines. I know Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman reported that the more talk and discussion about moving the draft back a year, the league and the NHLPA are discovering more hurdles. If you move the draft back, will players have to wait 7 years to unrestricted free agency? Will they be able to move it down to 6? What about the players drafted out of the Canadian Hockey League, right, Mark? Do they wait 2 years until they're able to re-enter the draft? Will that be kept the same, or do you move it down to 1? These are things that need to be solved, and it could be challenged, could create serious challenges. So it's a moving target right now, and I think it doesn't seem to make sense to me, considering the time frame right now and where we are and the window in which we need to construct a solution before the draft actually happens. So I know there's been talk about it. Do I see it happening? I guess so, but it would have to, decisions would have to be made rather quickly, knowing right now that the draft is in July.
Yep, absolutely. And there's always talk about, should the draft change? Should they change any sort of certain way? And one of the things that I've heard is maybe wait until someone is age 19, for instance. Is there anything that you'd like to see personally, Mike, from your experience, that you think could be beneficial in terms of the way they handle the draft?
I don't think so. And actually, I was just thinking about that as you were talking, ready to pose the question. I know there's been talk about going to a 19-year-old draft. If they do it, this might be the best time during a pandemic that has changed the scouting landscape for sure. But I don't like the idea of a 19-year-old draft. The 18-year-old draft rewards great scouting and people who see upside for players and reap the benefits for that. So I think you just keep the draft the way it is. I could see the possibility, and I just touched on this just a little bit ago, of moving this year's draft back a few months. There were rumors, reports from other outlets about possibly moving it to December. But my thought is that if the Ontario Hockey League and Western Hockey League begin their seasons next month, I honestly feel getting a 25-game schedule in order should be enough, Mark, in my opinion. That's a good chunk of games to get a good read on a player. I think there should be changes. I don't know. I kind of like the way the scenario has been with the draft. I enjoy the draft lottery and how they run the lottery. So I wouldn't change anything. I'm kind of partial to what the National Hockey League has been able to do.
Absolutely. And Mike, we'll end it like this. So it's early. A lot can happen. We get a lot more information between now and then, but like Owen Power and Carson Lambos and Matt Berniers and Brant Clark, those are some of the names that you're going to hear out the top of the 2021 draft. Do you have any sort of a semblance of who your number one is and who might make your way too early top five?
Well, I can tell you this much, Mark. No NCAA team has ever had more than 2 players chosen in the first round of the same NHL draft. This year, it's going to change. It is going to change. The only question is, would Owen Power, Matty Beniers, Kent Johnson, are they going to be top 10 in this draft? Because all 3 of those guys have been so special this year for the University of Michigan. I ran my top 32 in January, my first installment there on .com, and I liked Owen Power at that time, and I still do. 6'6", 214 pounds, big presence, good vision, strength, has the look of a top pair NHL defenseman in my eyes. The kid from Frölunda in Sweden, Simon Edvinson, a physical left shot defenseman, 6'4", 198, real good set of tools, mobility, skating, strong shot, and he's playing with with the big boys in the Swedish Hockey League. So I like Edvinson at number 2 right now. You mentioned Brant Clark. Love the kid. 6'1", 180. Will play for Barry. He's a mobile, puck-moving, right-handed shot, considered an excellent passer, playmaker, great vision. And he's playing in Slovakia right now in their top professional league. So good for Brant Clark and getting the job done there and at least getting some game play and some game action before the O starts. Matty Beniers, you mentioned him. We saw him at the World Junior Championship, Mark. He was outstanding. 6'1", 174. I have him number 4 right now. He plays for the University of Michigan. Did a lot to help the United States win a gold medal at World Juniors this year. And then number 5 right now, who I think could probably move up in my next ranking, Mark, is Luke Hughes. Defenseman for the United States National Team Development Program. And yes, fans, he's the brother of Jack and Quinn. Solid puck mover, good poise, and he's already got better size than his brothers. He's 6'2", 176 right now with the NTDP. So those 5 right now I could see as being in that range. I like the Kent Johnson from the University of Michigan, William Eklund from Djurgården in Sweden. You mentioned Carson Lambo, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He plays in the Dub. Hopefully the Dub can get on the way soon. Lambos is a good two-way defenseman, showing real good patience in the defensive zone and in transition. So a lot of good players to choose from this year, Mark. It looks like a real talented core, but those are the guys I like at this point.
Mike, really good stuff. And fans, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Mike Morreale NHL. Covers the Devils really well. One of the go-tos, him and Adam Kimmelman do a great job, and others with the draft. Mike, we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come join here on a Thursday to talk hockey. Really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mark. You stay safe.
Yeah, you as well. And fans, make sure you stay tuned for part 2. We'll have our Nashville Predators panel, and we're going to talk about what could be going on there. So stay tuned for that. Well, welcome back to part 2 of the Hockey Writers Live. And as you can see here, we have our panel on your screen, our Nashville Predators writers. Wray Perkin, Alex MacLean, and Dwayne Dunham have joined us. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Great. Yeah.
Good. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. And man, how about the Predators? How about everything that just seems to be going on with them as of late? I figure this would be a great time to bring you guys on to kind of fill us in to see what's going on and what might be next. So Ray, we're going to start with you on this one. Just get right to I'm not going to sugarcoat it. What is this team? What is their identity? Who are they to you?
They are inconsistent at best. And, there was a stat. I was watching the Detroit Fox broadcast of the game last night, and they showed a stat that the Predators have scored 24 goals in the third period and 15 between the first and second periods combined. So they start really slow, but they're apparently really good in the third period. So just inconsistent, and it's not just as a team, but they're, aside from Philip Forsberg, their individual performers have been extremely inconsistent as well. So if I had to pick one word to describe them, it would just be inconsistent.
So basically, Ray, what you're trying to say is make sure to put the Columbus Blue Jackets on their schedule for every game, and they'll be okay.
Something like that, or just tell them they're starting every game in the third period.
Yeah, whatever it takes at this point. Alex, what is this team to you?
I agree with Ray. They've been inconsistent, and I'm hoping that slow start and fast finish plays out in the regular season as well, so they actually have a chance for the playoffs. But they're a bubble team at best right now. They're the 11th oldest team in the league, and at that point, they don't have a lot of NHL ready talent in the pipeline, so they're not going up. If anything, they're going down. So if they have a Cinderella run in them at either this season, maybe next season, great. But otherwise, they're going to start falling down the standings pretty quickly. So they've got to pick a direction soon.
And Dwayne will give you the final word on the identity and who this team is in your sight.
Yeah, and this to follow up on what both Ray and Alex said, this team is definitely very inconsistent. This has been their MO for quite some time, the slow starts and the fast finishes. I can actually say that in the few years I've been in Nashville and doing Predators games for stats, the theme has been, very, very slow start. And then when they get into it seems like they got to get into the groove of things. And then the last 20 minutes, it's like, where did this team come from? And in this 56 game sprint to the finish, that's not going to really work in this time around. So if it was 82 games, yeah, absolutely, because that was the theme of the Stanley Cup run. They had a strong finish to the season, blazed through the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then got to the final. But that's not going to work in this situation with, you got 56 games, you got to get on it and go.
That's very well said. Alex, we'll start with you on this next question. You all mentioned in one way or another the inconsistency that this team seems to have, and I immediately look behind the bench and I see John Hines back there, and I don't know. Just fill us in on maybe what he has done and maybe what has he been able to do to get the best out of this team, and ultimately how much is he to blame for it?
Yeah, I think we've touched on him quite a few times in our group chat over on Slack, right, guys?
Yes.
So, yeah, we're kind of in agreement that he hasn't really been able to do much of anything that we can really kind of look at and say, okay, at least he's been able to get this in order or something. He hasn't gotten the special teams going, the power plays again at the bottom of the league, and it's not like they don't have a few guys that really can make plays with the man advantage. The goalies haven't been sorted out, and just about every day I look at the lines and they're different and they still don't make any sense.
And Dwayne, what do you got to say about Coach Hines?
Oh man, I think I said it a few times in Slack. It's like he's throwing like bad silly putty at the wall and hoping something sticks, because nothing has seemed to work so far in terms of the lineups, and then also not even just the power play, as Alice touched on, hasn't improved at all, but the penalty kill's been atrocious. Especially at the start of the season, the 7 goals in 2 games between Dallas and Carolina, and also making silly mistakes as well. And even when I look at the Predators live pregame show and when he's talking to Lindsay and Terry, and it's just like I feel like we just need to put a thing of equations in front of him, because it just seems like he's just talking in circles and he's confused, and it's just really just not. I don't think this was a good pick by David Poile, and but at the same time, it's kind of hard because you let go of Laviolette, and then you picked up John Hines off the street, and it was a slow start at first. They picked it up, and when the shutdown happened, Saros was actually on a hot streak at the time when Rene was on the downfall, but it seems like that kind of woke Pekka up, and now like it's really reversed now. So it's really a lot of just bad inconsistency there.
Yeah, for sure. Ray, you get the final word on John Hines.
Oh, I both Dwayne and Alex mentioned the line combinations, and I think too, part of John Hines' DNA is that he's a defensive-minded coach, and I think at times it almost seems like he's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Roman Josi is an offensive star. He's not the kind of guy you want in his own zone for 25 minutes a game. You need him carrying the puck up the ice and being a force in the offensive zone because that's his strength. And I think Hines has kind of maybe tightened the leash on him a little bit and told him to play a little more defensively. It's only been in the last 3 or 4 games that Yossi's really been really active bringing the puck up the ice. And I also look at a guy like Matt Duchene. I mean, you guys mentioned the line combinations a lot. I was living in Ottawa when the Duchene trade happened, and it took him about 20, 25 games to get going. But once they figured out line mates for him, once they stopped shuffling the guys on his wing, he really picked it up, and he was better than a point per game player the rest of his time in Ottawa. And since he's gotten to Nashville, it's been kind of the same type of thing, especially with Hines, where seems like every game or every second game, he's got at least one new winger. And Duchene's especially a guy who needs that kind of consistency in terms of line mates. So at some point they have to, and Hines really has to figure out the line combinations and kind of set everything in stone.
Interesting stuff. And we're going to get even more interesting. We're going to turn the heat up a little bit more now. So Dwayne, we'll start with you on this one. Just at this point, we've seen the inconsistency. We see that, they haven't had everybody, to be fair. Ryan Johansson's been injured, and a couple of other very important players have been injured for these Nashville Predators. But are we to the point that we need to blow this team up?
Oh boy, that is a very good question. I'm going to be on the side of maybe you do kind of look towards the future, but at the same time, I think Alex alluded to it in the first segment. There's really no NHL caliber talent that would kind of entice a team to kind of basically say, hey, we'll give up, a prize prospect. You have Askarov in the wings, who's been dynamic, and that'll be your goalie of the future. But there really hasn't been like that forward or linesman that can really just be like a key difference maker or a high draft pick like a Seth Jones at the time. So I would say that blowing this team up would be an option. The windows close, and not just hockey but all sports really. Windows close pretty quickly, so it really could be time. You have a goalie of the future. You spend the first round pick on him, which is very rare for goaltenders. So he had to be a special talent for that. So maybe you start to look at finding some prospects to build up with him. So when it is time for the future to come, the Preds will be ready.
Well, Ray, what do you say? Do you feel like that a blow up should be needed, or maybe something less than that?
I don't know about blowing the team up this year. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, because I look at the contract situation of a lot of the guys who could be trade assets, guys like Ekholm, even a guy like Forsberg, Yarncroke, Luke Kunin. Those are all guys who still have a year left on their contract after this year. So they might be more attractive assets trade-wise next year when they're in the last year of their contract and can kind of be a rental player. Now, from Nashville's perspective, you're probably not going to get as good a return on those guys if you wait until next year. So it's kind of a risk versus reward. Like you can, a guy like Granlund or Howla, like if you're going to trade those guys away who are on one-year deals, and that makes sense. But in terms of the full blow up, I think David Poyle really has to kind of sit down and do some soul searching and say, well, do I want to do that now and get, assets and prospects back now, or do I want to wait until next year and get, a better chance of getting more of these guys offloaded when they're just kind of rentals? And yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next couple months.
Alex, you get the last word on direction of the team, and if you feel that it should be a tweak or a blow up.
I'm going to build on kind of what both Ray and Dwayne were hinting at, is that you're really trying to optimize the windows here. And prospect wise, we're looking at Askarov, who's kind of going to be the backbone of your rebuild. Usually goalies take at least 5 years of developing before they even sniff the NHL. Askarov, I think he can be special. He's already putting up numbers that we only saw from Igor Shesterkin in his last year in the KHL. So Askarov could be ready in 2-3 years to make the jump to the NHL. And that's when you kind of want to start seeing your team moving up. So if you're looking 3-4 years down the line for when your window's starting to open up again, then over the next year or so, you're likely moving out Ekholm before the Seattle draft to make the most of your protection slots there. But the other guys that Ray alluded to, the Yarncrocs, Cousins, Forsberg, those guys, you likely won't entertain as much out of them until next summer, when you have a better sense of kind of where your team is at and what moves might make the most sense moving forward. So I don't know if now's really the right time to be pressing the red button and blowing everything up, but you do kind of want to open up those avenues so you have that option if it does seem like the best thing to do come next year.
And at this point, just in case you're just joining us, fans, this is the Hockey Writers Live. This is our Nashville Predators panel. Wray Perkin, Alex MacLean, and Dwayne Dunham are joining us, talking about all things Predators and what may or may not be coming next. And I am your host, Mark Scheig. So, Ray, let's go back to you here. You know, we brought up some of the names. I know Forsberg is apparently available. You think even names like Duchene and Johansson have been made available before, could be available now? Really not sure. But is there really anybody on this team in your mind untouchable?
Well, I know David Poyle, I believe on the weekend, said that he wasn't really interested in trading Rene. So, you know, I'm kind of cheating the question there because Poyle's already said it. I think if there's only one guy, it's probably Yossi, because I think he's still young enough that he can be a part of the rebuild. I think he's a good leader. He was groomed to be, you know, the captain of the future under Shea Weber before Weber got traded. But people thought Shea Weber was untouchable, and that trade blindsided everyone. So, you know, really anything's possible. But I think if there's one guy, it's probably Yossi. I think I would be surprised if they traded both of the big centers. Like I think Johansson getting traded is more likely than Duchene. I don't necessarily see them trading both of them away. And the reason I say Johansson's a little more likely is because he, you know, he's been around longer. The Predators, you know, they've tried to get as much out of him as they can. Whereas with Duchene, I still think there's a chance that they can get him back to being a point per game guy. As I mentioned earlier, it just takes, you know, consistent and the right line mates. So I don't know if they'd necessarily classify as untouchable, but I'd be surprised if both of them moved.
Alex, is there anybody untouchable in your mind?
Just circling back on what Ray said, I think it did come out from David Poyle that he kind of listed off Rene because Rene's likely to finish his career there, and that might just be to the end of his contract at the end of this year, as well as Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis all got mentioned. And I agree that those three names are generally your main guys that are highly unlikely to be moved because they have great contracts. They're still in the right age range, and they're some of the better players at their position in the league. Ryan Ellis, I think, is especially underrated, and his advanced metrics show it if you're into that kind of thing. The other name I'll toss out is Yaroslav Askarov, and he's not getting moved at all. And other than maybe Philip Tomasino, I can't list off anybody else that I couldn't see moving in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Thomasina is going to be fun when he gets there for sure.
Mhm.
Dwayne, give you the last word. Do you agree with what these two are saying? Or are there any other names that may not have been mentioned yet?
Absolutely. Yeah, Rene, because I even said in one of my articles that he's been the pillar of the organization. I mean, in all honesty, I never really, before I even moved to Nashville, I never really thought too much about the Predators until I saw Pekka Rinne. So Rene's really put the he's the face of the organization. So it's really hard to kind of just cast him away and make him a trade bait unless he really wanted to go cup chasing, which I don't think he wants to do. I think he wants to, remain a Predator anyway. And you'll see like Alice said, he's the perfect guy to do this rebuild with. I also agree with Ray in keeping Duchene because, Duchene needs that consistency for one. For two, he felt at home with the Predators and the Nashville area when he made his free agency contract. I remember that in the Tennessean. And then also Ryan Ellis, he's a very valuable player. Like, nobody really gives him a lot of credit, because he's been beside a Yossi and Shea Weber, but he really has been one of the more consistent players in this organization. So it's kind of hard to part ways with that.
Mhm.
I did look at some Philip Tomasino highlights, and yeah, he's a stud. And then if the Predators can get a goal scorer the level of prime prime Korea, they can be, they never had that in their history, like aside
Yeah.
from Korea, but Korea was on the tail end of his career when he arrived. But if they can get a prime goal scorer, like somebody in their prime their focus is just scoring goals, then that would be something to watch out for.
Imagine Duchene centering Tomasino and Tolvanen as a first line 4 years down the road.
Someday.
Right. One can hope.
One can hope, exactly. And I'll just throw a quick name out there before I get to these last couple questions. David Ferentz is somebody I think is very. I'm not sure we classify him as untouchable, but some of the rumors going around, whether it be Matthias Ekholm or whoever, and David Ferentz having a really good start to his season. He could very well come in and make an impact with the Predators. So it'd be really interesting to see how that situation plays out as well. So, Alex, we're going to start with you on this one. So we talked about the untouchables. Now, who do you feel like is the most likely candidate to be dealt and why?
I mentioned him earlier, and I'm going to say Matthias Ekholm. He just makes a lot of sense to be moved, and his name's kind of come up in the NHL rumor mills already. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and that would mean he would need to be protected in the Seattle draft, in the expansion draft.
Mhm.
And as we saw with the Predators last time around in the Vegas draft, they have some of their depth forwards that they like, that they want to keep. So I would imagine them not wanting to go the route of protecting 4 defensemen again, so that they can kind of be sure that they're holding on to Yarncroc and Kunin and all of them. Matthias Ekholm would return a great piece to help along with any kind of reset or rebuild for the Predators. So I think he's the name to watch there, aside from the obvious trade deadline moves of whatever unrestricted free agents they also have.
Dwayne, what do you say? Most likely candidate to be traded in your mind?
Yeah, I would say someone on a 1 year deal like Ekholm, Granlund as well. He could be moved as well. Those are probably the prime targets, I would say. I would say that they are, you got an expiring contract, that's like gold for GMs in sports. They see a 1 year deal. Okay, we can get them, basically rent them for a year, and then, we can decide what we want to do with them after that. I would also, what would not surprise me, I have two. One that would surprise me one that won't surprise me. So the one that would surprise me is Dante Fabro. They used the first round pick on him. He's finally coming into his own. He's been paired with Metco in the last year and a half, and he's really learned a lot from him. So I have seen his name thrown out there, which would surprise me. But I think now that Fabro's coming into his own, that makes Ekholm a little bit more expendable. The one that would surprise me would be Saros. I mean, Saros would be he could be a target because he hasn't been playing as well, and that's not really mostly his fault. I mean, he's had bad support from day one when he was the opening night starter. So, but Pekka's coming off a shutout. He's coming off some great games. He's clearly been the better of the two. And so that can make UC Saros more expendable. So, and if a team needs a goalie or they need to supplement their depth at the goalie position, that would be somebody to look at too, is on an expiring deal.
All right. And Ray, give you the final word on who you think might be the most likely to go.
I think I agree with Alex. I think Ekholm is probably the most likely candidate to be traded for all the reasons he outlined. I think Granlund and Howla, because they're unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. And similar to how Dwayne outlined it, like one guy who it would surprise me a little bit given the fanfare when he signed, but I wouldn't be shocked, would be Mark Borowski. He's got 1 year left after this year. He's a bargain, I think, at $2 million. And any team going in for a playoff run knows who's watched teams go on long playoff runs before, knows you can never have enough tough, physical, hard-nosed defensemen on your blue line when you're going to make a big playoff run. Borowski's got a lot of experience. He's all of the adjectives I just used. He's hard-nosed, he's physical, he's defensive-minded. So I would be surprised if he got traded, but I wouldn't be shocked. And I think, there probably will be teams calling David Poile as we get closer to the trade deadline, just asking, what's the asking price? What are you looking for a guy like Borowski? And I think Nashville's kind of underusing him right now on the third pair. And I think other teams are looking at that too. So maybe they might even see him as like, a fresh addition to the blue line. He's not getting nearly as many minutes this year as he has in years past when he was in Ottawa.
And I'll give one name that I didn't hear mentioned, but he kind of qualifies under the whole being a unrestricted free agent part, but he's been injured the beginning part of this year. But if you need a center and you want to have a cheap deal, Brad Richardson. I think that's an easy name that Preds get somebody for him, and then a team gets a depth center, and you can never have enough depth centers especially when you're chasing a playoff spot.
Especially a guy that kills penalties like he does.
Absolutely. He does so many things that just might not hit the score sheet, but he's crucial to success. So
those intangibles are everything.
That's absolutely right. So we got one final question for you guys, and Dwayne, we're going to start with you. So this is your chance to be the optimist if you choose to be. Is there any hope at whatsoever for the rest of this season in your mind, Dwayne?
Given the history of the Predators of slow starts and fast finishes, there is optimism. I mean, this era of Predators hockey has been defined by that. And like I said, they had slow starts. It looks like the season's going downhill, and then the switch gets turned on, and then they start picking it up. They do it in games. They did it in the Stanley Cup run. I think they even did it in the year afterwards. Like, it was a slow start, but not that year. That year they won the President's Trophy, but the year last season before the shutdown, Saros was getting hot at the right time, and Nashville was getting real dangerous before COVID wrecked everything. So, and then when the restart happened, they just didn't get it going again. So I would say that there's hope. I want to be an optimist on that and say there is hope. It's going to be really tough though, because you got to really start winning these these games and beating these teams ahead of you, because you can't play Detroit every single night.
That's for sure. And Ray, what do you say? Are you going to play optimist, or is it a little bit more of a pessimistic view in your sight?
I'm going to say I'm an optimist, but I have a caveat to that, which I'll get to in a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's always room for hope, even though we were out of a playoff spot. I remember a bunch of years ago, the New York Islanders made an unlikely run at the end of the regular season with Wade Dublowitz in goal. A few years ago, Ottawa made the Hamburglar run with Andrew Hammond in net. And then a couple years ago, the St. Louis Blues with Jordan Binnington, a rookie, in net. So who's to say the Predators can't make a run with Pekka Rinne in goal? Like a guy who's already been there, who's been around. He's the best goalie in franchise history. So why not do it with a veteran instead of one of those unproven guys? However, I think that, and Dwayne mentioned, beating the teams ahead of you, and absolutely there are teams that you have to chase to get into the playoffs. But I think the teams that Nashville specifically has to chase and has to move ahead of would be Chicago and Columbus. Columbus, we mentioned it, I think, before we came on air, but Columbus doesn't have a lot of depth at center. There's lots of question marks in their lineup. I don't even know what their goalie situation is because it seems like it changes every week. But so Columbus is a question mark for me. I also think Chicago, who's gotten off to a surprisingly hot start, I think they have to cool down at some point. So those would be the two teams to chase if you're Nashville. I don't think you're going to catch Tampa. I don't think you're going to catch Carolina, and I don't think you're going to catch Florida, as amazing and surprising as that sounds. But if you can get past Columbus and Chicago in the standings, then you're going to be set. So I'm an optimist, but you also can't have, get too big-headed about it. You have to be realistic and say, okay, we're probably not going to pass Tampa. Let's settle for ending up fourth in the standings and making the playoffs, and then going from there.
2 games at Bridgestone Arena this weekend against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, and that goaltender situation, well, unfortunately, Elvis Merzlikins is injured right now. So Jonas Korpisalo is going to run with that net, and they better get some defense going if they're going to find a way to try and stay in the race there. But well, that's a different discussion for another time. So Alex, you get the final word on the Predators, and if you choose to be optimistic or pessimistic about the rest of this season.
I think the optimistic view was outlined pretty well by Ray, and one team he didn't mention was the Dallas Stars, that they are the last team you're going to have to leapfrog likely for that last playoff spot. And though the Stars have had a pretty terrible record against the top 3 teams in the division thus far, I still think they're likely a better team than the Predators right now, especially once they get healthy. And that's going to be one of the biggest difference makers, is the teams, Chicago, Columbus, and Dallas, that Nashville is chasing, are all dealing with some pretty important players on the sidelines right now, whether it's Werenski or Taves or Tyler Seguin or whoever it may be. And even with all of that, Nashville's sitting down in 7th right now. So if Nashville hits any injuries, or if they just can't really get things turned around, then it's going to be somehow a long 56-game season. I do think the one button that they have left to push is the John Hines button, and whether you're bringing in a coach from the outside or the AHL coach, I'm blanking on his name off the top of my head, but I think he's your best immediate fit as somebody that could help start to push some of the right buttons to get things back on track.
Yeah, you think? Do you guys think, real quick, John Hines would go? I mean, we saw Claude Julien go, and you're talking about a over 600 hockey team in terms of points percentage. Do you feel like should we be paying attention to that? And anybody can answer this.
Yes, I think you should. And Carl Taylor, who's the head AHL coach in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Thank you.
Would be a good fit for that, because he knows the players that came up from Milwaukee, and even though you you let go of one coach prior to you can let go of John Hines, because if you need to get this thing going, like I said, it's a sprint. This isn't no marathon this year. So we got it's now or never. So I will push that button real quick.
Yeah, and I think the thing that Nashville has working in their favor, if they do go down this path, is I don't believe they're on the hook for the rest of Laviolette's salary. I think Washington took that on. I could be wrong, but I think I read something when it happened about when he got hired by Washington that they were taking on the rest of his Nashville salary. So that definitely opens the door, especially in a cash-strapped society like we are in the pandemic right now. Like, I think that almost works in Nashville's favor if they choose to push the John Hines button.
Oh, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Nashville Predators at the end of the day. So Ray, Alex, Dwayne, you guys were awesome tonight. Thank you so much for joining the panel tonight. We really appreciate your time, and fans, make sure that you see the Twitter handles on there at Wray Perkin, at Alex D. MacLean, and at D. Dunham Jr., our Predators writers. Guys, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And fans, next week we will be back again. It'll be new episode every Thursday now. Dave Metzold from Fox Sports Ohio is already going to be our guest for next week, and he's going to come in, talk about the Blue Jackets and what all's going on there, as well as being a TV reporter during the pandemic. I think he's got a very interesting story to share, and then we'll have a different panel next week. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next time here on the Hockey Writers Live.